Hi guys, this is Mrs. Waymeyer, going to be talking to you today about our different types of number forms that we can write them in: standard form, word form, and expanded form. Before I continue, I need to give credit to Rebecca Ruiz. This is a Teachers Pay Teachers worksheet that she has created. I'm just using it as an instructional piece for my students. So today we're going to talk about standard form, word form, and expanded form. And you'll notice that this also says number form. So standard form and number form, those are synonyms for each other, and that's just a way to tell us that it's the short way, the normal way that we see numbers. So we're going to use this number up here as our example. Before we continue, we need to also remember that when we get to a decimal point and we move to the right of it, this is where our decimal number begins. And so after a decimal is where we start with our tenths, then our hundredths, then finally our thousandths. In fifth grade, we won't go any higher than thousandths, but of course, you guys know numbers go on forever, so there are infinity decimal place values too. Standard form. So if we were going to write this number, we would just write it like we normally see it: 25 and 138 thousandths. So if you notice when I read this, the decimal is going to be the word and. I read the beginning as it normally is, 25. And then the second part is all squished together. Our decimal digits are pushed together to make 138 normally. But we also have to say thousandths to tell someone that this number is in decimals and it goes all the way to the thousandths place. So for word form, we would write it just exactly like we would say it. So just like I said just a moment ago, 25 and 138 thousandths. I'm running out of space. And it's kind of squished there, but make sure that when you write your word form for your tenths, hundredths, or thousandths that you do also include the THS ending there. So 25 and 138 thousandths is how we would write it in words. And then to do expanded form, it's going to be a little bit different than what you guys did in fourth grade. In fourth grade, you guys talked about breaking it apart by place value, but to this time in fifth grade, we're throwing in a decimal. So there is two ways that you can write it in expanded form. You could write it using a fraction when you get to the decimal place value, or you can write it as an actual decimal. We're going to use the fractions for now, and then eventually we'll talk about what the decimal form might be if you threw that in. So expanded form, we're going to break it apart by place value. So the first part, I always start at my biggest number. It helps me kind of make sure that I get all my place values accounted for when I'm trying to make sure I get all of them listed out. So I always start in the biggest. So I have a 2 in the tens place. Then we also need to add our next place value with it, because everything that's here, we have to have all of it in order to make our whole number. So 2 in the tens place, we have a 5 in the ones place, we have a 1 in the tenths place, and then we'll have to go down a little bit. We have a 3 in the hundredths place, and finally an 8 in the thousandths place. Now notice with each of our place values, we're putting a multiplication symbol in between those, because we're saying 2 times 10 is 20, and 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 times a tenth is only 1/10, and 3 times a hundredth is only 3 hundredths. The reason that we have these plus signs in between, or addition symbols, is to show that when you put all this together, if we were to squish it all together and do our standard form, it would look like this. For organizational purposes, you could leave it exactly like this and your answer would be done. I like to use parentheses as my grouping symbol because there are some numbers that don't necessarily always have every place value. And so this kind of helps me keep track and make sure that I get every single one of my place values so that I get all of my expanded form answers correct. So hopefully that helps. Please rewatch the video if you need it, but that should be reviewing standard form, word form, and expanded form. Thanks for watching.